Okay, we are ready to go, I think. Let's see how we go today. Maybe. G'day Jemima, how are you? I'll be with you in a second, mate. We're just waiting for the stream to load on YouTube and we will be good to go. And we'll start with something a little bit more boring and then we'll get into what everyone wants to learn about, I think. All right. Alrighty. Good evening, folks. My name's Chris Nitzo, lead forecaster at Weather IQ. We're going to discuss today very quickly and briefly the Cocos Island cyclone that was just named this evening by the Bureau. This is Cyclone Jenna. You might have been hearing some rubbish about a Cyclone Jenna off the Queensland coast. It won't be that way. Cyclone Jenna is this one. Then we're going to go quickly into the Queensland one. The Queensland one's got a lot of moving parts, it's pretty complicated. So I'm going to try and dumb that down as much as I can without dumbing it down so much that the information's wrong. But I don't want to sort of scientifically dumb it down to the point where I don't want to scientifically explain it to the point where everyone's not going to understand it. Okay, so it's going to be a difficult task for me to try and get it into easy bits and pieces for you to digest, but I'll give it a go. After that, once I've finished talking about that, we're going to talk about another low coming in from the Solomon Islands. It's going to be coming in next week, coming towards the Coral or into the Coral Sea. And we're also going to discuss the interrelationship between the northeast Queensland low and the possible interrelationship between that and a Gulf low as well. So there's a lot, as I say, you'll see what I mean when we get into it. If you can leave your questions until we're sort of 15, 20 minutes in, otherwise I might not be able to go back and see them. All right, so please make sure that if you're going to ask a question, you don't ask it yet. Let me explain some stuff first, and then you can ask it. So if you ask it now, I might not be able to go back all the way through to see it. Before we get started, our major sponsor on the top left there, Fair Income Builds Townsville, for a shed-safe accredited shed. And also, we are completely funded by ourselves and by our generous supporters. So that website on the top right, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. It's $32.95 a year. You get my forecasts every single day of the wet season. $39.95 you get a few extras, and $69.95 you get that plus all of our radar models and all that stuff that has gone missing since the Bureau of Meteorology's upgrade to their website. So you can get all that stuff for $69.95, and you're supporting us. So we'd really appreciate it if you did. If you were in a position to be able to support us, that'd be fantastic. Just to give you an example, today we gave a little blurb. By the way, you get that blurb on Facebook too. I give you that blurb. And then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 video forecasts today. So they were all about the various regions. So obviously we talked everything we're going to talk about here. We've already talked about in those updates. So the subscribers already know about this stuff. We also talk about the Queensland Weather Week. Then we break it up for the Cairns and Tablelands region. The southeast Queensland region today had a lot of storm activity and rain activity, so we talked about that. The Townsville, Herbert, Lower Burdekin and Charters Towers area. The Mackay Whitsundays region. We break it up into central eastern Queensland, so Capricornia, Wide Bay area, and also the eastern central Highlands. And then we finish off with the Cape and Gulf of Carpentaria, which is another big weather area over the course of the next week or so. And tomorrow we're adding the NT and Northwest WA as well. Every Tuesday and Friday we do updates on those two areas as well. All right, so that being said, let's get stuck into it. Okay, Cyclone Jenna is located just east of the Cocos, has been moving generally in a southerly direction, and I'll just give you a quick look at what she looks like on a infrared color image. So you can see very deep convection right over the top of the Cocos. See how the deepest convection, the actual cyclone is east of this deep convection. You can see a lot of deep convection right over the Cocos Island group there. So pretty significant stuff. It's a category 1 at the moment. It's really struggling to develop that deep convection around the centre. It's only sort of keeping that deep convection on one side, that western side. But that western side is the side that matters, right? Because that's the side that comes right over the top of the Cocos. That system's going to affect them for the next couple of hours, and then is going to duck down to the south and southwest into the Never Never and just die over the southeast Indian Ocean. So that's Jenna. She is our 6th tropical cyclone of the season, and Tropical Cyclone Jenna is now has put us over the edge now. We are in the 2nd most active cyclone season start since historical records began in the 70s. So that's the 2nd most active cyclone season start since over the past, what's the 70s to now? 60 years or so. All right, so very, very significant start to the season. Now, thankfully, the 2 cyclones that have hit the coast have only hit the coast in very sparsely populated areas. And our next focal point is over in the Coral Sea. So let's get over there, eh? Obviously, the big thing with the Coral Sea cyclones is that they do tend to affect people. A lot of the WA ones tend to affect very sparsely populated or indigenous communities with very sparse populations. This one is likely to, whatever it becomes, is likely to impact a population centre or two. So there's our low located here. And I'll just pause the image there. All right, so there's our low located. It's moving fairly quickly, located about 220 kilometres east to east-southeast of Cairns, and around about 250 to 270 kilometres northeast of Townsville, or north-northeast of Townsville. It's tracking in a northeasterly direction, and that's very important. That was the part we were umming and ahhing about 2 nights ago. Remember, we were umming and ahhing about whether it was going to go north or whether it was going to go northeast. North meant nothing to worry about, just a bit of rain. Northeast meant we've got something to worry about longer term. So we do have something to worry about longer term. Let's get into that. The expectation at this stage is that the system is going to continue to move in this northeasterly direction all the way through to the northern Coral Sea, well away from the coast. And that's the big change, right? The system is expected to be out here on Wednesday night and Thursday. On Thursday, something big happens. Let me go through what the big thing that happens on Thursday is. We'll go back to our weather centre, which you get with a subscription, by the way. If we go back to Queensland now, and let's have a look at what happens on Thursday. And we'll use the AI modelling to give us an idea of what's happening here, because the deterministic model can sometimes be a little bit inconsistent. So we like the consistency of the AI modelling. So if we use that, we can see what happens by looking at the 950 winds. So these are winds around about 500 metres up in the atmosphere. And we're using these so we take the frictional effect of the ground out of the equation and gives us a better idea of what's going on with our wind field. All right, so as we talk, as I'm talking there, we're up to Wednesday. Now watch what happens here on Thursday. Do you see on the southern side of the system and the northern side of the system, we increase our winds. So what we've done here is we've created a monsoonal flow, or strengthened a monsoonal flow, and we've strengthened a subtropical southeasterly, what we call a pressure gradient squeeze flow. So there's a low here and there's a high way down just south of the screen there, all right? And that creates a pressure gradient, and that squeezes the air between the high and the low towards the low. So that's why we get the big yellow and orange stuff. So that's telling us that just above the surface, we got winds of about 35 to 40 knots. And on the northern side, we got winds of about 30 to 35 knots. So what happens, because these winds come from different directions and they meet at that central point, which is that monsoonal trough, we create areas of enhanced rotation in that trough. We've got a second area of low pressure that we do need to monitor, and that's out here in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And this is going to be a bit of a nuisance. And what it is going to do is it's going to complicate the wind field of the primary low. More on that in a second. So as we go through, we can see that we're getting this strong easterly or southeasterly and strong westerly or northwesterly. both coming together over the monsoon trough, both coming together in this area where this enhanced, already pre-existing area of vorticity or rotation is occurring. So the monsoon trough is this entire thing here, but inside that monsoon trough, we have two areas of enhanced rotation. And so these winds will try and congregate into those areas of enhanced rotation and actually make them spin faster. And spin creates low pressure. So the more spin, the more chance we have of lowering the pressure at the surface. On top of that, when we have that curvature of the flow, we begin to create big thunderstorms and big rain areas, heavy rain areas. All right, so we've got a curvature of the flow, we've got a squeeze on both sides of the low, and so here we've got a situation, fairly interesting little cocktail of ingredients here that are ready to get this thing to intensify. The problem we're facing at the moment is that the system is going to be fairly oval shaped, like an egg shape. So instead of being like a tight little circle, it's an egg shape. When we have an egg shaped system, what happens is we tend to see the wind field dispersed over a larger area. So what does that mean? It means that big winds happen over a much larger area, but the winds can't centralize over a certain spot. So what we have here, some of the biggest winds associated with this low are a couple of hundred k's away from it to the south, a couple of hundred k's away from it to the north. So what does that do? Well, it creates big thunderstorms where those biggest winds are coming together. Where those winds are getting squeezed, that's where we're creating our big thunderstorms. That's not good if you're a tropical cyclone. If you're a tropical cyclone, you want to see those thunderstorm areas being squeezed right into your center. And so here we've got a lot of convection going on to the south of the circulation, huge convection going on through the Torres Strait and the north of the circulation. And on top of that, we've now got our little friend over here, another little low, which is trying to create its own little set of thunderstorms. So we're now dispersing all of this energy over a very large area. All right, so we've got a very deep monsoon trough. Okay, but we've also got two areas of rotation, and we've got to distribute all of that energy that's coming into that rotational field over a much larger rotational field. So it's not the most favorite outcome for a tropical cyclone in this setup. All right, so no doubt there will be cyclonic winds, but structurally this system may not necessarily be a tropical cyclone at this time. As we continue on, we maintain very strong winds from the north, 40 to 45 knots, 40 to 45 knots from the south. These are sustained winds. So these are, on the surface, they're about 5 to 10 knots less than that. So they're about 35 knots. So it's producing Category 1 winds on the south side, and it's producing Category 1 winds on the north side. But they're not wrapping around the center of circulation. They're displaced. And so from a technical perspective, on the ground, you're going to feel Category 1 effects. On a technical aspect of this, that may not necessarily qualify as a tropical cyclone. Those winds aren't tightly wrapping around the center of circulation. They're fairly loose, and they're extending a long way away from the circulation. That's the hallmark of a monsoon low. Monsoon lows can be very dangerous, and they can provide winds of Category 1 and Category 2 intensity. They just don't meet the structural requirements for it to be labelled a tropical cyclone by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. So the JTWC may label this a tropical cyclone because they just need gales on one quadrant, and they're going to definitely get that. So this may be a JTWC tropical cyclone at this point, but from the BOM standards, probably not there yet. So let's continue with it. As we continue, we can see that the system never really fully tightens up. So you can see there that as it starts to come onto the coastline, you've got these strong winds, Category 1, Category 2 potentially winds on the eastern side, maybe Category 1 winds on the southern side as it comes onto the coast. Not much on the northwestern side because we've had this little low that was stuffing around for ages, and by the time the little low here in the Gulf finally vanishes and dies, we have a situation there where the system's too close to the coast to bring that wind field into it. Okay, so the idea here is that we never quite tighten up to tropical cyclone structure, but we do get tropical cyclone winds. Very, very important that you understand, just because here it didn't tighten up in time, doesn't mean that we're not getting tropical cyclone winds on the ground. All right, so important understanding there, the difference between the nerd stuff, all right, whether it's a tropical cyclone, and the, oh my God, my trees are falling down. You know, that's still going to potentially happen in this setup, the trees falling down part, okay? But from a nerd perspective, there's a chance there that this has a fairly irregular wind field, a good chance that it has a fairly irregular wind field, and it's going to be difficult to map that wind field, as you can see there. The system in its last phases here, as we get to Saturday night, Sunday, tries to tighten up. Once that little Gulf low lets go, and there's two schools of thought here. Some of the models indicate this little Gulf low will push west towards Nhulunbuy. Some of the models suggest that this low will become absorbed into this circulation. And that absorption happens too late for the system to tighten up before hitting the coast. So in this setup, you've got a system that's trying to tighten up really, really late in the piece, but it just never quite achieves it. And so you've got a situation where you've got a system hitting Tully in this setup. Hang on, I'll show you all the different setups. But in this setup, you've got a system that's hitting Tully, but producing its strongest winds between Townsville and the Whitsundays. All right? And you've got a system that's hitting Tully, but producing some of its strongest winds in the Torres Strait and through areas offshore off Cooktown. And so you can see how irregular that wind field is, right? So we can be a long way away from this and be experiencing extreme effects of it, and be right underneath it, i.e. Tully, and not be getting much wind at all, depending on the type of structure this is. This is not going to be your typical textbook tropical cyclone for North Queensland. Just understand that it's going to be highly irregular. If you remember, we had a cyclone in Townsville called Kirralee a little while ago. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. It was a highly irregular wind field as well. Very marginal as to whether it should have been a tropical cyclone on approach to the coastline, because it had lost a lot of its strong winds around the core, and it was only producing strong winds on the periphery of the circulation. And, you know, on hindsight, the Bureau decided to keep it as a tropical cyclone, but there must have been some discussion about the fact that it had a very irregular wind field and potentially wasn't even a tropical cyclone on landfall. So this is that same hallmark is starting to show here. And the big culprit, the thing that makes this complicated, is the Gulf low. Without the Gulf low, this thing gets to tighten up and become a proper tropical cyclone with proper wind field and proper effects, which is those strongest effects right near the centre. But at the moment, we've got the Gulf low hanging around, which complicates the meteorology behind this thing, all right? So it complicates that wind field. It disperses the energy over a large area. It creates thunderstorms over a huge area of the northwestern Coral Sea. And it doesn't allow the cyclone to pull those thunderstorms into the centre to really tighten up and strengthen that wind field close to the centre. So there's a lot of problems going on here. And when I show you these models and that show you that there's an 80%, 70% chance of a cyclone hitting the coast, I need you to understand the models don't interpret the wind field. The models just interpret the winds. So if the models see that there's a low and they see that there's 50 knots of wind, they're going to go, there's a cyclone hitting the coast. But understand that 50 knots of wind could be displaced, 150, 200 k's away from the system. So just understand when I show you these probability charts, the irregular wind field is our issue here. All right? So the technical definition of whether this is a tropical cyclone is the issue, not necessarily the on-the-ground effects. The on-the-ground effects definitely look cyclonic on the south side and potentially just off onto the northeastern quadrant where that monsoon is curving into the system. The problem is going to come, does it fit the technical definition of a tropical cyclone? So that's the nerd speak. The on-the-ground speak, your trees are still going to be falling, all right? But it's just whether or not you'll just have a severe weather warning or whether you'll have a tropical cyclone warning, depending on how tight we can get that wind field. All right. Let's go to some of the modelling. By the way, once again, can I ask you, if you do like what we do and you are able, if you do like to support us, we do have a subscription service, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe, and go check that out. All right, let's have a look at these charts. Now, these are the charts you often see online. These are the probability charts of seeing a tropical cyclone in the probability of tropical cyclone winds over a 300 kilometre square area. So what we're looking for here, what we're looking for here is, once again, is there tropical cyclone winds? And what we've got, just to give you a heads up there, so anything that's in the greens and blues and purples means there's a pretty decent chance of seeing tropical cyclone winds, all right? But understand, we come back to that technical definition. Yes, there's going to be cyclone winds out here between now and, I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller for us. Right, between now and Thursday, there's going to be cyclone winds out here, no doubt about it, because you just saw what's going to happen, right? You saw that big surge of southerlies, and you saw that big surge of northerlies. So there's going to be tropical cyclone winds, almost certainly. But is it going to be a tropical cyclone? Probably not. Okay, not at this point anyway. So as we go into Friday, now our cyclone winds are really ramping up on that southern side and the eastern side of the circulation. There's a high probability now of tropical cyclone winds. You can see about a 60 to 70, possibly 70 to 80% risk of a tropical cyclone winds, not a tropical cyclone, winds. As we continue on, we can see as we go into image 3, this is taking us out to Saturday morning. We see the tropical cyclone winds extending down towards the Queensland coastline between Cooktown and Ingham on Saturday. All right, so there's a reasonable chance that we start seeing cyclonic winds on the coast between Cooktown and Ingham on Saturday. You can also see that there's a reasonable chance of cyclonic winds on the northwestern Cape. That doesn't mean our cyclone suddenly got across to the Cape. It means that the cyclone is interacting with the low near the Cape, all right? And the low near the Cape is creating significant winds on its northern side, and our cyclone is creating significant winds on its southern side, all right? So that's what the model is trying to tell us there, and if you don't understand what you're seeing, you look at that and you go, oh, there's a 70% chance we're going to get whacked by a cyclone. That's not necessarily the case. The cyclone probability is getting higher, but we still need to tighten the wind field. All right, as we go into Sunday morning, we can see that there's about a 70% risk of cyclone winds between about Cardwell and Ingham. Let's go Tully to Ingham. And there's about a 50% risk of cyclone winds from about Cooktown all the way to Bowen. All right, so at this point, remember, we've got a highly irregular wind field. We could see a large area of gale force winds on the south side of the circulation. We could see some localised destructive winds potentially as well, and I'll show you some of the models that show destructive winds, because there are quite a few that show Category 2 winds, even when the cyclone's not a Category 2 cyclone, tropical cyclone. All right, as we continue on into Monday, we see the system coming onto the coastline by Monday morning, more likely to come onto the coast on Saturday, Sunday. So our tropical cyclone winds look like they're, the tropical cyclone probability winds, let's try that again. The probability of tropical cyclone winds starts to drop off, because by that stage, the system should have hit the coastline. And then as we continue, those probabilities drop off significantly by Tuesday, because by that stage, the cyclone should be inland. All right, so understand that, yes, looking at that, you're going gung-ho. Yep, tropical cyclone, 100%, almost 100%, right? But understand the variation, the variability, and the wind field issue that we've got. And here's a great example. On Friday, you can see that the system's packing 35 to 40 knots here on that southwestern quadrant. Look at where our low is. Look at how far away the biggest winds are. Those winds are displaced. These ones here are the closest, and they're about 100 k's away from the circulation. These ones are about 300 to 400 k's away from the circulation, and they're almost as strong as the ones that are 100 k's from the circulation. These big winds, look at them. They're up around tropical cyclone strength, about 33, 35 knot sustained winds, all right? And once again, they're hundreds of kilometres displaced to the north. This is the hallmark of a monsoonal low at this stage that is still producing Category 1 winds. And when we take a look here at the wind gusts, let's have a quick squiz at those. Let me find those for a second. Right, we can see that our wind gusts are around 45 to 50 knots on that side, 45 to 50 knots on this side. So that's well and truly enough to start causing a little bit of foliage damage, not enough to cause structural damage, hopefully in North Queensland, especially if you've got a shed safe accredited shed from Fair Dinkum Builds up there in the top left, but certainly enough to start creating some issues, right? As we continue, we can see that we never quite tighten the wind field. And you can see, so our cyclone here, and this is a great example actually, the cyclone here is coming onto the coast on Saturday around Cairns. Now, once again, I'll go through all the different possibilities of where it comes onto the coast. So it comes onto the coast around Cairns. Have a look at who's getting the biggest winds. It's Townsville. Cairns isn't getting much at all, and the cyclone's literally crossed right there. But it's Townsville, Ingham, that are getting the big winds. They're getting winds gusting to 40 to 50 knots, right? And you can see on this eastern side, we're getting winds in excess of 50 knots. So it's that irregular wind field. So the system here can't be labelled a tropical cyclone by the Bureau of Meteorology, despite the fact that it's creating tropical cyclone winds. And that's the problem we're going to face here, is trying to figure out this wind field and who's at risk. And you can see here that the system itself is around Chillago. So that's our cyclone there, at Chillago on Saturday night. Have a look at who's getting the big winds. We're getting 40 to 50 knots all the way down to Bowen. All right, do you see that issue that we've got at the moment? So it might not fit the technical definition, and all of our big winds are down here. Speaking of big winds, have a look at what's going on up through the Torres Strait. All right, they're getting the same sort of 40 to 50 knot winds that we're getting down further to the south. All right, so this is the problem we've got at the moment, folks. A lot of potential for the system to intensify. The environment up there in the Coral Sea is very favourable. Probably its biggest detriment is that the environment in the Coral Sea is very favourable. So we will see some massive thunderstorms developing in the Coral Sea. The problem that the cyclone has is it can't bring those thunderstorms into the centre of circulation very easily. And so it has to disperse those thunderstorms over a large area. And so consequently, we get a situation where the system comes onto the coast and, you know, it's come onto the coast. Where is it? It's around Croydon, Georgetown there. And who's getting the biggest winds? Bloody Bowen. I mean, that's the sort of unstructured system that we're dealing with. How do we avoid this? How does it become a tropical cyclone? How do we tighten it up? By getting rid of the Gulf flow. If the Gulf flow isn't there, which is still a possibility, the Gulf flow could just die, all right? And if the Gulf flow dies early enough, our cyclone is able to contract that wind field, focus that rotation, and that's how we get it into tropical cyclone from a nerd perspective. That's how we get it into a tropical cyclone. So that is still a chance, all right? But understand that at the moment, over that such a large dispersed area of convection, such a large area of rotation, it's just going to run out of time before it gets to it's able to tighten that field up. All right, so that's where we are at the moment. So obviously, when we're talking about wind accumulations, I mean, when we're taking a look at, let's say, for the entire time frame, you know, we could be looking at some pretty serious wind, right, onto the coastline. We're looking at sort of 45, possibly 55 knots here off the coast of Cooktown to Cairns, possibly 45 to 55 knots around Townsville. So this is potentially an area of extremely large Category 1 wind field. Sorry, there, that's better. So this is probably an area of extremely large Category 1 wind field and extending up to the Torres Strait. But it's just not fitting the definition of a tropical cyclone, and that's the problem at the moment, all right? And when we're trying to tell you how strong the winds could get, we really don't know until we can get a little bit more of a handle on this structure. If the system can show signs of tightening, absolutely, we can start to map that wind field a lot more. We can go, right, it's going to hit Tully, and we know that the area between Tully and Townsville are going to get Category 1 winds. If this thing hits Tully now, the Category 1 winds are going to be Townsville to Mackay, all right? So, and there's going to be very little wind over Tully. If it hits the way the modelling is telling us it's going to hit at the moment, there's not going to be much on ground zero where it actually crosses. And that's going to confuse the shit out of everyone, all right? And it's going to be very difficult for the bomb to message that to you all. And I don't envy their task over the next few days to try and explain that in dum-dum terms for the average person about how the lows hitting Cairns, but all the big winds going to be up around Cooktown or all the big winds down around Townsville. It's going to be a very difficult message that they're going to have to pass on with their severe weather warnings in this setup. And as I say, I don't envy that job whatsoever. It's hard enough for me to explain this here to you with unlimited time. So that's our issue. Let's have a look at what sort of winds we could get on this and what we're sort of looking at. And I'm just going to use, this. Alrighty, so generally speaking, the system, and this is the problem with our models, right? They're going to say that this is going to be a tropical cyclone, no doubt about it. Almost all of them are telling us this is going to be a cyclone, Category 1, Category 2 wind field. And absolutely, they will be right. There will be Category 1 and Category 2 wind field. We just don't know where those winds are going to be. We know so we're tracking the low centre, and you can see that the general consensus at the moment is that the low will hit between Townsville and Cairns. And basically every single model will show a crossing point between Townsville and Cairns. All right, that's the general model consensus, crossing between Townsville and Cairns, and crossing on Saturday or Sunday. All right, that's pretty simple stuff, pretty basic. And that's not the issue here at the moment. The issue is going to be, it might cross there, but where are we going to see the biggest winds? Are we going to see them where it crosses? Is it going to be able to tighten up in time that we end up contracting the wind field? Or is it going to be one of those situations where the system's going to be a Kirralea, where it crosses Townsville, Townsville gets maybe 80 to 100, Category 2 or 3, crosses Townsville, Townsville maxes at 80 or 90 kilometres an hour, and people down around Home Hill and Bowen are getting blasted by 120, 130s. And people up north might be getting blasted by the monsoon, right? So all of that's going to be a really difficult concept right now. So for now, yes, Category 1, Category 2 is the likely outcome in terms of the wind strengths. Where are those wind strengths going to be? Possibly not right near the centre of circulation. All right, so let's have a quick look here. So the system is going to move in a northeasterly direction until about Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night. On Wednesday night, it stops moving east, it stalls for a little bit, and then starts to move back to the west. Earliest crossing time, very, very early. I don't think that's going to happen, is Friday afternoon, Friday night. Later crossing times, or more likely crossing times, is going to be somewhere between Saturday and Sunday. Actually, I'm going to show you this model because it's a lot clearer on this. I think the Euro AI has a lot of clutter. There's a lot of shit members on the Euro AI that do some weird things. So if we can just concentrate it a little more, we can see a little bit better what's going to happen. So earliest, that's better. The earliest potential landfall is Friday night, Saturday morning. And you can see those ones that hit Friday night, Saturday morning are hitting up north. Right, and once again, you can see this one here, this little sucker over here, hits the coast at 959 hectopascals with 97 knots. No, that's not going to happen. But what we can see are the ones around it, they're around 988, 990 hectopascals, and they're producing 57 knot winds. All right, now, are they producing 57 knot winds right around the centre of circulation? Probably not. They're probably producing those 57 knot winds hundreds of kilometres southwards. But the model won't understand that, and it'll tell you that the system's coming on as a Cat 2. All right? So sure, Cat 2 winds, but where are those winds? Probably not around the centre, not at that early stage because the cyclone hasn't put itself together. So these ones here are the ones that are more likely to happen, the ones that are still out to sea by Friday night, Saturday morning. And these ones come onto the coast at some stage on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, or Sunday up to Sunday afternoon. All right, so that sort of 24 to 36 hour window is where we'd be anticipating. And you can see we've got as far south as Mackay and more likely to be in the Townsville, the Cairns area. Although we have seen a trending southwards in the model guidance in the last 24 hours or so. So there is that. So we need to keep following the trend and seeing if that trend continues, or have we finished with the trend and will this be our final spot? So with models, they tend to follow a trend. So if they trend southwards, they might do that for the next couple of runs and then they'll stop, and that's where we'll end up with a more definitive crossing point. Sometimes, though, we reverse the trend and we get back to where we were at the start. Where we were at the start, if you remember 2 nights ago, we were looking at something up around the Cooktown, Daintree, Cairns area, right? That was the model average 2 nights ago. So over 2 days, the model average has trended further southwards by about 200 kilometres. And it'll be very interesting in 2 days' time, because in 2 days' time, the system will have stopped moving eastwards and it will be up here. It'll be very interesting then to see where the trend is. Is it still here? In which case we can start to then lock into those regions and say, right, this cyclone is coming your way. Or are we still trending southwards? Are we heading more towards Bowen Whitsundays longer term? All right, that'll be interesting to see in a couple of days' time. But for now, that appears to be our most likely solution. That's not really our issue. The southwest motion, we're pretty set on that. You can see out of 30-something members, there's one model member that doesn't push the system where we're talking about, right? That's 1 out of 31, so that's a 3% chance, basically. All right, so not overly concerned about other stuff that might happen. The thing we're concerned about at the moment is how is the system structured, all right? Because that's going to matter on the ground, all right? If we've got a system that's crossing Townsville, but it's a loosey-goosey low, then our big winds aren't going to be around Townsville. They're going to be down here around Mackay Whitsundays. And if the Mackay Whitsundays isn't switched on, they're going to cop Category 1, Category 2 winds, and they're not going to even know that they're happening. All right, so that's the messaging that the Bureau, that's the challenge the Bureau's got, to try and message that shit, because that is going to be very difficult to message to Mackay folks when they're looking at a cyclone hitting the coast north of Townsville. They're going, why the hell are we in a warning? All right, so that messaging is going to be very tricky for the Bureau. I reckon the Bureau are hoping that this thing tightens up into a proper cyclone so they can issue proper advices for it and with proper wind fields, because the rest, the alternative is a bit of a nightmare as to who you warn, what are you warning for, and how far away are you warning. This whole thing is a bit of a nightmare from a operational perspective, because if we can't find that wind field, and if the wind field is so far displaced, you've got to put the whole of far North Queensland and North Queensland on alert, like the whole thing. Because if you can't map that wind field and it's such an irregular wind field, it's going to be very, very tricky to send that message out to everyone that they need to be prepared. So as I say, I reckon secretly, the Bureau would probably be hoping that this thing tightens up into a proper cyclone and just whacks a couple of spots, and they can really target those spots with their warnings, because otherwise we're targeting a huge area of the North Queensland coastline with a blanket warning. Right. So that's what I've got to say about that one. Now listen, there is another low that we do need to mention. And, oh Jesus, stop that one. Right, yep, there it is there. So in behind this, so once this has crossed the coast, in behind it, there's another set of modelling that shows another low coming west, southwest, and southwest from the Solomon Islands. That low is expected to come southwest. Now, if this low keeps stuffing around, let's say it doesn't move as quickly, these two might have an interaction longer term. So there's a lot of complexity here. We're not going to deal with that tonight because that'll just boggle everyone's mind, including my own. So we're just going to assume that our low has hit the coast here, whether it's a cyclone or a low, whatever, it's hit the coast. Now this system comes in hot on its heels. At this stage, this second system is expected to stall off the coast and push away to the southeast. All right, we do expect an upper trough through midweek next week to come through Queensland, and that upper trough is expected to stop any westerly motion and take it out towards the graveyard. But it's not 100% certainty for this one, right? So you can see in a couple of these little dots over here that the system does get a little further north and the upper trough misses it. And so in these setups where we've got a few model members that end up hitting the coast with it, all right, so that would be a worst case scenario if we had two in a row straight after each other, coming at us over the coast. So at this stage, though, I don't want to alarm you with this one. This one does look as though it is going to push away from the coastline and a fair way off the coastline, all right? So that's certainly something we will be watching longer term, though, to make sure that happens, all right? But quite clearly, I think most of the modelling there is telling us that the system is going to be able to bugger off out to the graveyard without making direct contact with the coastline. So our big issue right now is going to be the structure and the wind field of our tropical low. Don't even think about asking me about rain. For those of you that I reckon I would have seen it, I haven't seen the questions, but I reckon there'll be a lot of questions about rain. We don't know. If we can't map the wind field, what chance have we got? We got Buckley's chance of mapping out the rain field, which is even more complicated. All right, so without understanding the wind field exactly, we don't know where the strongest convergence is going to be. Without knowing where the strongest convergence is going to be, we don't know where the big rain's going to be, all right? So once again, if we don't know the wind field, we're not going to know the rain field. So if you're asking me about how much rain can I expect from this, the answer is how long's a piece of string? We don't really know. And there's going to be a very sharp rain gradient where that convergence occurs versus where it doesn't occur. So maybe the low, if it's still a low structure instead of a cyclone structure, maybe where the low crosses the coast, we might get 50 mils. And 200 k's south of where the low crosses the coast, where the convergence is, we might get 300-400 mils. All right? And then if I tell you, oh, the low is going to cross here, and you're expecting big rain and big wind, you might be disappointed on both fronts. All right, so it's going to be a real complex task to map this thing out and figure out how it's going to be. I just hope, for everyone's sake, it becomes a tropical cyclone. We can bring that wind field in. Josh Morgs from the US can come over and we can have a bit of a chase together. That'd be awesome. But at this stage, folks, it just looks like one of those tricky systems that doesn't fit the textbook definition of a tropical cyclone. I haven't looked at the Bureau. Let's see. I think they usually update their cyclone maps tonight. I haven't looked at their stuff, but oh Jesus, let's have another look. There we go. Let's see what they've done with this. They had it at 25% last night, so let's see what they've done with it today. Yeah, so they've kept it there. What have they kept it? 30%. They've upped it to 30%, and you can see that they're crossing the coast in that Cooktown through to Innisfail area, potentially maybe down to Ingham if it stays till Saturday night, and then pushing it across the Cape. Obviously, once again, it's the 30% means that there's probably a 30% chance of a tropical cyclone, not 30% chance of tropical cyclone winds. All right, just be very clear on that. There's very clearly going to be a cyclone wind field around it. It's just where around it. Is it going to be tightening, or is it just going to be a loose oval-shaped area of cyclonic winds around over to the east and to the south of the circulation? So at the moment, that's all I got for you. Let's have a look. We'll go through some of your questions. By the way, before I do the questions, just remember we've got a subscription service, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. If you want to know more and you want more details on the complexity of these things, the science behind them, plus you want daily forecasts for your local regions. So weatheriq.com.au/subscribe, $32.95 a year. It's not going to break the bank. I'm not asking you for your second born kid. It's $32. It's 5 cups of coffee a year. Right. Let's go. Kevin, hi, Nitzo, great work, mate. How windy do you think it'll get in Charters Towers? Where are we? Let's try that again. I'm just going to load up our multi-stream chat. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, Leanne Laidlow, how much rain? Mate, that's a question I'm not even going to try to answer today. That's a too hard basket. If we can't tell you where the winds are going to be, we're definitely not going to be able to tell you where the rain's going to be. All right. But what we're seeing, if it is a dispersed situation where we don't have a tight wind field, that rain is going to be dispersed as well. We're going to see rain from the tip of the Cape all the way down through the Mackay Whitsundays area. The whole coastline will get rain in that setup. But there'll be a pocket of that coastline where the convergence is strongest, where we'll see the heaviest rain. And we can't tell you where that's going to be. But the whole coastline will probably see 1 to 300 in that setup, right? So that's the beauty of the oval-shaped low. But the problem with the oval-shaped low is the messaging. Because people are going to expect something and they're going to be very disappointed or very happy. And then other people are not going to expect something and they're going to be extremely disappointed and extremely surprised when it happens, well away from where it crosses. So, mate, that's yeah. How much rain? I can't answer that. And Scott, your question too, what about rain? Can't answer that. We need to wait and we need to watch. That's what, again. Why don't we get the kinds of super cyclones like Southeast Asia and America? Giovanna, yeah, look, it's a mix of pretty unfavourable atmospheric conditions, a lot of stability locally. In the Coral Sea, we tend to see a very stable... We still get the super cyclones off WA, but they're very small. They're very small systems due to a lot of dry air around the circulations. But in Queensland itself, there's a lot of stability in the Coral Sea. It's very hard to get the Coral Sea to be unstable. And so a lot of the time, we can't continue that storm activity for any length of time before it all stabilises and the mid-level stabilise. So we have little spurts of instability and little spurts of forcing and the ability to create some strong storms, but we can't sustain that over a very long period of time. Plus our body of water here, much smaller than what we get over... Oh, we don't have a map of Southeast Asia there, but if we go up here, the stuff that's coming into the Philippines, have a look at the amount of water we've got there, right? And there's no obstructions whatsoever, all right? And on top of that, you've also got the possibility of upper level troughs enhancing outflow that comes off these mountains and off this massive landmass of Asia. That helps outflow channels. We've got all sorts of things here that assist with large systems and very powerful systems that we simply don't have in Australia, all right? And as I say, Western Australia is the closest we come to that, but they're not usually large systems. Western Australian cyclones are some of the smallest in the world by diameter and radius. So the idea here would be we can still get just as powerful cyclones here as we do in the Northern Hemisphere, but we don't get them big. They're not big here. They're very small. Here we can get big cyclones, but they're not usually powerful. They're usually very large, very similar to what this could end up becoming, just a very large, loose, raggedy old thing that's probably driving Category 1, 2 winds over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometres, but without much substance, right? Yeah. Justin, high pole. Hey, JT, you're back. Justin Tolley. Love watching this. Thanks, Chris. Catherine, loving your detail. Thanks, Kath. Great info, Janine. Thank you, Janine. Tennyson, the swooper. Yeah, we talked about that. That's that system coming in behind this one here, right? That's the swooper. So for the subscribers, we've been talking about this second system for a long, long time now, about a week or so, where we talked about this system coming onto the radar a while back. I haven't sort of tried to say that in public yet because obviously I don't want to alarm people, and the initial estimates of this system was showing it coming onto the coast, so that's why I definitely didn't want to alarm people because we had this one to deal with. But now that we're seeing more evidence of the system going out to sea, we're a little bit less concerned about the swooper now, and we're just really watching this one here close to us. Okay. Yeah, Wayne, very active cyclone season. Yeah, Wayne, second most active cyclone season in the history of cyclones. YouTube froze again. Bloody hell. All right, but we got through most of that. Copy on Rainfield, Maryland. Yep, let's move on. Don't worry about the rain. Brad, what are the chances, in your opinion, of the Gulf low dying sooner? Bud, Gulf lows... Oh, I'm going to swear. I hate them. They're so hard to forecast, mate. I don't know. What's the probability of it dying? Hard question to answer, man. We look, the monsoon is strong. And because the monsoon is strong, you wouldn't want to bet against any low in this area, right? So this shows about a 40 to 50% risk of developing. And then, no, I'm not going to give you a probability of it dying, mate, because I just don't know. We know that there's going to be a strong monsoon, and we know that the system's going to be probably a slightly more northwards of this one. And so because of that, it's going to be hard to kill it. The only thing I can see happening is it getting absorbed into this low. I don't see it just dying spontaneously. I see this low becoming so powerful that it sort of grabs it and says, right, I come into this, and sort of just gobbles it up. And that's the sort of dance that they might do, where this one gets gobbled up into the circulation of this larger system. But I don't see it dying on its own straight away or anything like that. So I don't see a rapid intensification of this thing from Cat 0 to Cat 5 or anything like that, because I still think this is going to be a nuisance all the way through till about Friday, maybe Saturday. Yeah, I'm not liking your chances of that dying anytime soon, mate. Here comes the panic buying. Who wants timber? And there goes the toilet paper. Thanks, Nitso. Great info. Steve, no worries, Steve. Trish, thanks, Chris. No worries, Trish. Nice work, Nitso, says Jazz. Thanks, Jazz. YouTube lasted a bit longer tonight. Yeah, I'll have to upload this one again to YouTube. Will the Gulf Low have the same steering from the ridge down south? Yeah, Brad, that's an interesting question, mate. And I'll show you this chart. And this has got your answer, right? So what we've got here, so what we're looking at here is basically, just to basically explain this, anything that's pink indicates low pressure. The L indicates the low pressure center based on the ensemble. And so you can see here, as we go into Friday night, Saturday morning, where our low is in the Coral Sea. And when we get into the darker pinks, or the purples, whatever you want to call that colour, we tend to see intensification of the low pressure signal, but also the possibility that the low pressure signal could be located in multiple areas, in different areas, right? Different models. So what we see here is a gradual intensification of the low pressure signal, and we also see potentially in a couple of models there, a low pressure signal intensification in the Gulf. Now, if the low pressure signal in the Gulf intensifies, and this is an interesting point, this would then take a ride on the ridge and move west across the top end. So it's a good question you bring up, Brad, because if the low here intensifies, it will want to move west under the influence of mid-level ridging and push over the top end, and then we could be looking at it coming off the Kimberley coastline. And longer term, we might see something going on over there, right? So, but that only happens if our low wants to develop vertically through this time frame. It's not the expected outcome. So I don't want you thinking, oh, Nitso said we're going to get a cyclone off the Kimberley. No. But there is a risk of that happening, right? Where it becomes strong, it leaves this low alone. This low then pushes to the west. This low is free to develop in the last 12 to 24 hours before landfall. And then this one, we're then watching over the NT and over the Kimberley longer term. But for that to happen and for the mid-level ridge to grab this, it needs to develop vertically and it needs to show some strength. It needs to show us something basically, right? Can't just be some rubbish little shower out there with just no substance about it. It's got to be a nice deep system for the ridge to capture it and take it west. Otherwise, the low-level monsoon flow will push it into this low here. And that's why we see in a lot of models it gets absorbed by the main low, which is the one off Queensland. But it's a good question you raised, Brad. Oh, Dylan must have gone in there and given us a plug for our sign-up service. Yeah, don't forget, folks, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. If you want to get all the forecasts from me every day during the wet season, and you want to support our work. As I say, today we did 8 forecasts. Tomorrow there'll be about 10, I think. And Wednesday will be a bit less because we're doing a month ahead and a season ahead forecast as well. So there'll only be a couple of forecasts on Wednesday because we got the important ones. Jackie, would either of these affect northwest Queensland? Yeah, Jackie, absolutely. There's a risk there of the Townsville one, the Cairns Townsville one, coming in west. And just have a look at this chart that I'm showing you now, Jackie. So there's a risk there that one comes into the west and then catches a ride on that same ridge I was just talking about for the Gulf low. All right. So you could see there as we go into Monday, the remnants of this low is through Georgetown, Greenvale, and then pushing westwards into the northern goldfields and upper Flinders area. That's terrible news in this setup. So fingers crossed it doesn't quite work this way, because that's the last thing you folks need is another couple of 100 mils coming out of something like this. I guess the one positive there is that at least it's moving. It's not just sitting there like the last low did. It does look like it just wants to move across the base of the Gulf and then into the NT longer term. But yeah, it's a good question you raised there, Jackie, because this one here and the regular size and shape of it also makes life very difficult trying to forecast rainfall for the northern interior as it pushes to the west, right? But there is a real chance there that it does continue moving west, mate. And so, yeah, it is one that I would be definitely watching. I'm in northwest Queensland, I'd be definitely keeping an eye on this and just seeing what the trends are in the models. But at the moment, there is a real risk there that it continues moving west. And when I showed you these charts here, you do notice there that the system does move into the northern interior, and in some models it manages to get all the way into the into northwest Queensland. Especially on the European model, you can see we see a very sharp westerly motion through northwest Queensland. It won't be strong, but it doesn't need to be strong because it's going to be bringing in the monsoon around it, and it's going to be bringing in that coral sea moisture around it. So it doesn't need to be strong, it just needs to be strong enough. And it certainly looks strong enough in most of the model members there to be able to bring a wind field of moisture around it and into northwest Queensland. So I would be slightly concerned, but I wouldn't be panicking just at the moment because we do have variations of that solution. Remember, we do have some models that do bring it southwards more towards the Bowen Whitsundays area. And from there, we would tend to see it move into the Central Highlands. Or in the inland Mackay region. All right, so there are some other solutions. So this isn't the only solution, but this model is very, very keen on taking it west right across northwest Queensland, and that is a concern for now. But it's not done. It's not a set in stone thing. You can see in this model suit, we tend to see the system weakening across the northern interior once it has crossed the coastline. So yeah, look, Jackie, I'll definitely keep an eye on it, mate. Yeah, hopefully you can get as much sun as you can over the next week and allow those river systems to maybe just settle down. I don't think they will, though, because it takes a long time to drain these river systems through the Gulf. It's a very flat area. Yeah. Marilyn, on sub, best ever. Awesome. Great stuff, Marilyn. Please, a cyclone for Rocky. That would be one of the less likely solutions. But hey, listen, with something this irregular, I'm not going to rule anything out. Brad, hey guys, the problem here is the Wallies on Facebook are drama queens. Yeah, there's some shit pages out there and there's a lot of people following some shit pages. Brooke, cheers for your work. And so thanks, Brooke. Leanne Laidlow, thank you, Leanne. Thanks for tuning in. Mick Farrow, is Mick Keeley coming down? I wouldn't think so. Not for something like this. Not for something, especially something that looks as loose and raggedy as something like this. No way. It's not worth it. Wayne, very dismal so far in Cairns, so looking forward to some decent tropical rain. I'm pretty sure you're wrong there, Wayne. Let me have a look. I'm pretty sure Cairns has had some good rain. No, I'm gonna call you out on this one, Wayne. Let me have a look here. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But I reckon Cairns has seen some good rainfall here in the last week or so. Let's have a look. Show rainfall for the last week. Yeah, I mean, it's not great rain, but it's 150 to 250 mils over the week. It's not bad. I don't know what you're expecting. I mean, Cairns averages, what is it, about 400, 450 for the month? Mate, that's almost half the average. That's, you know, a third of the average over a week. A week's less than a third of a month. And you didn't miss out by much. You know, there's some big rain just south here, and there was some okay rain up there around the Daintree. So, yeah, look, we'll call that a draw, mate. I'm not on board with Cairns being dismal, but I'm also, okay, maybe I was a little bit over the top thinking that Cairns had great rain. But, you know, 150 to 200 mils, that's not something to sneeze at over a week in Cairns. If the low cyclone hits south of Cairns, would the Tablelands Cairns be open to strong winds on the north of the system? Yeah, don't know, Blaine. We see, mate, this is the problem, right? In a cyclone, so if a cyclone hit south of Cairns, a tropical cyclone, we would see the northern side of that with the escarpment winds, the potential for really strong gusty winds, right, on the northern side. But because we don't know what the structure of this is going to be, and we know that there's going to be a Gulf flow stuffing around, we know that Gulf flow is going to basically block a lot of that northwesterly flow. So does that mean it's going to block any strong winds on that northwestern side? Probably. All right, so that would mean that there'd be less chance of the tablelands, even if it did hit south, less chance of the tablelands getting some big winds out of it because of that second system. So that second system throws complication into the mix here that we don't normally get. We don't normally have that byplay between the two lows so close to each other. So I can't answer that, Blaine. We're going to have to wait, mate. Thursday night's our next one of these. Otherwise, tune into if you're a subscriber, tune into our subscription service, where I'm sure they'll know just a little bit ahead of you guys. Giovanna, thank you. That was so interesting. I learned a lot. Great to have you with us, Giovanna. What moisture level do you generally look at? Bear, is this for a cyclone, mate? So Bear, on our subscription service, we have charts that look at tropical cyclone moisture content for the atmospheric parts of the that are associated with tropical cyclones. So for a thunderstorm, we look at 850 to 500 RHs, and we've got thresholds there. So if we don't get any greens, we know no storms. Could be the most unstable day in the world. If we don't get greens in this chart, no storms. You could have minus 10 LIs. You're not going to get a storm. All right, but for cyclones, we use a slightly higher level than thunderstorms, because cyclones have deeper thunderstorms, stronger thunderstorms that go much further into the atmosphere. And so what we see here is we use a 700 to 400 RH average. And we've got to use an average because sometimes in the tropics, the bottom part and the bottom part of the atmosphere is really moist. The top part of the atmosphere might be really moist, and the middle part of the atmosphere might have no moisture whatsoever. And that often happens in the tropics that way, where we've got a lot of high cloud, a lot of low cloud, and then nothing in between because it's so dry and quite stable. And so that's why we use a relative humidity average over multiple layers of the atmosphere to find out whether or not we have enough moisture for a cyclone to sustain itself. And what we can see here in this chart is that we get a lot of dry air up through Mackay and Townsville over the next few days, but that dry air does not get up past Willis Island. So if our cyclone's located here, it's going to have a lot of moisture through that level of the atmosphere to play with. A lot of moisture to be able to continually create thunderstorms. And why is this important? Well, cyclones need to maintain thunderstorms around their core. And so what we're seeing is if we don't have enough moisture, they'll pulse thunderstorms. So they'll get big storms overnight, and then during the day, the storms just die, and the cyclone can't develop, can't deepen, can't strengthen. It looks amazing at night because there's all the big storms and all the lightning all the sort of lightning imagery that starts to pop up on your weather center, but the cyclone can't intensify because it can't sustain that, right? So, and that's why we use this chart, mate. 700 for cyclones also. It's not about just getting greens. We need blues. So anything that's not blue means no cyclone. All right. So blue on this chart, 700 to 400. And for cyclone, and 850 to 500, we've got to see at least green. If we don't see green, no storm. Could be the most unstable, could be a triple point, could be all sorts of craziness going on, could be the coldest 300 hectopascal level you've ever seen, and the hottest 45-degree day on the surface with 100% moisture. You're still not going to see a storm if you don't get green on this chart. That's our final limiting factor. So this is the last chart we check out when there's storms around, when there's storms on the forecast. And if this isn't green, no storms. There's been a number of days in southeast Queensland this season where there were no storms because this chart wasn't green. Everything else was telling us severe storms, and the Yahoo pages were going crazy. Massive supercells, supercells, supercells. It was like one shower. And there were multiple days like this over October, November, right? So this is the chart. This is the final chart. It's like the final boss. So you can get all the amazing ingredients of a thunderstorm, and then you come to this chart and suddenly you're blocked. And the boss says, nah, not happening. So if this chart isn't green, you're not getting a storm. And if this chart isn't blue, you're not getting a cyclone. All right, so this chart here isn't blue, you're not getting a cyclone. So you can see there's plenty of opportunity for a cyclone up there. There's a lot of moisture. And you can see that moisture starts to move southwest with the cyclone. So the cyclone advects the moisture, brings in the moisture into the region. And so what we see then is it takes the environment with it. So it's not fighting the environment. It brings its own environment, this tropical environment, into North Queensland and displaces the dry air because of its strength of its wind field and wind flow. Okay? Is it staying pretty dry up and down most of the coast? Yes, Fee, there's not much rain coming for the next X number of days for this region. And I'll just, this is one we can use windy for. Let's have a look here. Rain accumulation. So, mate, between now and, let's say, Friday, so the only places that are getting a bit of rain is going to be these areas around the mountain range, right? Innisfail, Babinda, Tully, you know, the places where the big, strong southeaster comes up, whacks the mountain range, creates a bit of rain. Pretty typical stuff for those folks. You know, Cairns, that might be a bit ambitious, getting 60 mils out or something like that. I reckon that's a bit ambitious by the Euro. But overall, you know, if we're going to get decent rain in this area, it's going to be up around the Daintree, the North Tropical Coast, and maybe around Ingham, maybe. But they're the sort of areas that'll get rain this week. Everyone else down here get nothing. You get 5, 15, 20 mils, maybe if you're lucky, over the course of the entire week. And the other area that'll do okay is the Whitsundays, Mackay area, because they got a nice big mountain range out the back of Mackay. That's going to result in a bit of lift there orographically. And they got some ranges very close to Serena and these sort of areas in here, which can assist with that lifting process. And they've got that little funneling area around the Whitsundays. They've got a few hills over here, and they got that funneling area of that southeasterly flow, so they'll do okay here through the Whitsundays as well on the mainland. So those are the sort of areas that we'll see good rainfall over the course of the next week. Obviously, goes without saying, our focal point of rainfall in the state is going to be the Torres Strait Islands and the northern parts of the Cape in the next 5 to 7 days. This is the big action, all right? But obviously, we probably don't have a lot of people listening in from up there. But this is where the big action's going to be. You know, a little bit of peripheral shower activity through these regions. Thanks, Nitso. No one explains it better than you. Thanks, Steve. That is a very difficult one tonight. Very difficult one, mate, because of that irregular wind field. It's extremely hard to explain. Lane, hard to predict, but you must be loving the challenge of working. Yeah, mate, absolutely. Like, don't get me wrong, I curse and I swear a lot about these things and the way they're structured, but it's what makes it. It's what makes this stuff so beautiful, because it's every cyclone's a challenge, right? I hate it when there's just a vanilla cyclone where it's just meh, same. But when you get these weird structures and you've got this thing over here and this thing over here, and then you got the little swooper coming in from the Solomon Islands in a few days later, you know, it makes things fresh. It keeps things fresh. And the Coral Sea's a really good basin to make things complicated and keep it fresh, and keep your mind active. So you can't just assume. And that's what I love about the Coral Sea. It's the same thing I hate about the Coral Sea, because obviously most of our subscription base comes from Eastern Queensland and they want answers, right? And it's very difficult to give them answers. And so that's the challenge. And I've got to make sure that I don't lock in the answers until I can, because I understand how fluid the situation can be. But yeah, it's that challenge and that complexity of the Coral Sea that makes me love being a nerd about this stuff, you know. WA cyclones tend to bore me because they're usually very small. They're usually really easy to predict. The only thing that might keep me on my toes for WA cyclones is because they're small, their intensity fluctuates a lot. So we could get Cat 1s to Cat 5s and Cat 5s to Cat 1s in 24 hours pretty simply out here, right? Because they're very, very small systems. And that's what keeps you on your toes in WA. But other than that, they're pretty vanilla. There's not too much doubt about a lot of the tracks. I mean, I'll give you a look at a WA track. So that's our Queensland track over here, right? So that one there, and then you've got this one here, which is about a 3,000 kilometre error area, and this one here, which is about a 1,000 kilometre error area, and that's only 4 or 5 days away. Have a look at this. That's the sort of shit that bores me. I mean, it's great if you're a person who wants to know what the weather's doing and you want a real obvious Nitso, when's it going to rain type thing, and when am I going to get the winds. That's great if you're a general public. But from a purist, science purist, that's shit. I mean, there's no variety there. We know what it's going to do. It's like a snooze fest, right? So, yeah, I mean, as I say, for the general public, if we could get something like that in the Coral Sea, that'd be great for everyone, wouldn't it? All right, but that's the beauty of the Coral Sea. It keeps us guessing. And that's why I get the shits when someone talks in absolute certainty about something happening, when I realise the complexity of it, and I don't think they do. And you can see the complexity here. I mean, you could get anything from Cooktown to Mackay. All right, there's a lot of complexity there. And you could get anything from Cat 2, Cat 3 to not even tropical low, or not even tropical cyclone. So, yeah, it's that complexity, mate. Keeps things fresh. They originally had that second system heading towards Rocky. Yeah, no, not happening now, mate. Being invective, being advected. So the word there, mate, invective is not a word. Advected. Brad, you're asking what's the chance of good moisture being advected to southwest Queensland? No, probably not great moisture for southwest Queensland. If we do see some advection of moisture, it's probably more around eastern parts of Queensland. So maybe southeast Queensland could see some increased rain and storms from this stuff with the next upper trough. Southwest Queensland, not so much. I'm not seeing too much evidence of heavy rainfall there. Just want to have a quick look at what's the Euro telling us there longer term. Yeah, southwest Queensland, not really. Central West Queensland, chance. Northwest Queensland, good chance. And then maybe starting to move into central inland and maybe southeast Queensland as we go into the end of that week. But yeah, and this is, I mean, that's a great example there. I don't like seeing charts 2 weeks out of rainfall in this setup because it's silly. But you can see if we get the loosey-goosey, large-scale, oval-shaped low, everyone's getting a decent drink here. There's not going to be too many folks missing out from about Yeppoon northwards. And the same thing from about Claremont Emerald northwards, right? So everyone gets a big drink. But, yeah, it's one of those situations, mate, we don't know the rainfall. And I can't say I'm interested in southwest Queensland. Raylene, we just followed the coast in the past 5 days, and in parts it was so heavy. I think you mean the rain, Raylene. I'll take that as a comment. Cool. Cloncurry, thank you. Jackie, same thing we just talked about. I think you asked me about northwest, mate. As I say, it's not a done deal, but it does look pretty ordinary at the moment. It does look as though we are going to start to see some heavy rain there again next week, but you will need to watch this space. Will the heat wave down south affect this? Bella, I don't even know that there's a heat. I've got so much on my mind up here. I didn't even know there was a heat wave down south. There you go. That's why we're all tropical weather, bud. We don't do anything about the down south stuff. We don't know anything about it. I'm assuming when you're talking heat wave, I'm assuming they got a big ridge, right? And that's driving northerly winds down into the south. And sure, in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, we're seeing, and I think I showed this to you, we're seeing some pretty strong ridging. So I'll go winds and we'll go... Yeah, so we'll go about 500. We'll go 500 hectopascal winds. And so we're going to start to see this big ridge through the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And I'm assuming that that's probably what's going to be causing, if there is a heat wave down there, I'm assuming that same ridge at the surface is going to be causing a fair bit of heat down there as well. But that ridge is very strong, and you can see anything in the Coral Sea with that deep thunderstorm activity is going to be moving west because of that ridge. All right, so yeah, look, I dare say, mate, if there is a heat wave down there, I'm sure that the system that's creating that heat wave at the surface extends into the mid levels, and that mid level system is probably what's helping to drive the cyclone westwards as well. Lucy, when do you think Bowen will start to see most of it? Probably Saturday, Lucy. We'll start to see Bowen getting involved with big winds. Don't forget, though, we're going to see some big winds through Bowen on Thursday because of the big the strengthening pressure gradient squeeze, right? So for Bowen, Thursday, big winds, and then Saturday, I'm starting to see some rainfall from it. Someone sent us stars. That's awesome. Thanks, Bear. Looks like my flight might be cancelled on Saturday morning in Townsville. No, I wouldn't think so. Saturday morning, that might be a little early. I think most of the models that showed a crossing Saturday night, Sunday morning for Townsville. So let's have a quick look. So first sign, Saturday night. First sign of that system on the coast near Townsville, if it's on the coast near Townsville, Saturday night, mate. So Saturday morning looks okay. That's for Alana. Glennis, wish we got some rainfall. Clouds are blocked here where I'm from. You might be in a rain shadow area, eh, Glennis? What are the chances, Tim? What are the chances of it moving inland, then moving south-southeast into central? I don't think they line up, Tim. So when we take a look here, mate, you see here that the system's moving west on Sunday, Monday, and then we sort of lose a lot of shape here by Sunday, Mondays, and we lose a lot of structure. And so for it to be captured by the upper trough that's coming through midweek, it needs to hold structure. So you can see here in a couple of model members, notice that the couple of model members that push it south and southeast, they actually keep it a bit stronger. And so if it's got a bit of vertical development still, sure, there's a small chance there that it can get caught. That upper trough that you're talking about, Tim, that's coming through to drive everything southeast, it's a pretty weak trough, eh? It's not like an October-November trough that extends deep into the tropics. It's a pretty weak trough. So and look, if the cyclone's sort of still up north here, no chance, right? But if it sort of comes down Townsville-Bowen way and then sort of comes into here, then yeah, there's a chance there that it could get caught by that upper trough around midweek next week and get pulled down into south or southeast Queensland. Look, I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule out anything right now, but it would have to go into central Queensland, so it would have to be a more southward motion system. So one that sort of comes down around Townsville, Bowen, maybe Mackay, and then comes in like that. And that way, the upper trough might be just strong enough to grab him and bring him down to the south and southeast. So it's a chance, mate. Amy, good rain in the Cairns and the Tablelands. Yeah, there has been. Tablelands especially, been very impressed with some of the rainfall they've had, Amy. Heather, thank you for your great work. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. Kenneth, thank you. I appreciate the updates. Good stuff, Kenneth. Can you please tell me winds for the Atherton Tablelands? Look, from the cyclone, no, I can't. But from general wind perspective, because we don't know the structure of the cyclone, right? So once again, we come back to that whole thing. We don't know the structure of the cyclone, so we can't really speculate how strong the winds are going to be. Not much, obviously southeasterly winds, we could get those to gust up to about 30, 35 knots. This is well before the cyclone, so this is on Thursday when that big ridge comes up. So who am I talking to here? Chrissia Pesky. So here we go. So this is where we could get some strong winds well ahead of the system's not even, it's way up there. But there's some opportunities, particularly on the higher country of the Atherton Tablelands, where those wind farms are near Atherton and Tolga. So there's a really good chance there that we pick up some fairly strong winds in that southeasterly flow in those areas. And then as the system comes towards us, you can see that we're starting to get some pretty decent rain, some pretty decent winds there, up around 30 to 40 knot wind gusts as the system comes towards us. And then once the system comes into the coastline, you can see when it actually comes over the tablelands, because in this scenario, not guaranteed, but in this scenario, comes over the tablelands, there's not much wind there with the system, right? All the wind is further south and east. So once again, we talk about that structure, all right? So because of the structure, the wind field here becomes very uncertain as the system moves inland. So that's the Atherton Tablelands probably seeing their strongest winds on Thursday with the southeasterly. Nothing to actually do with the cyclone. Unless the cyclone hits up around Cooktown, in which case that southeasterly will crank through the Atherton Tablelands. I don't see the Atherton Tablelands being a major wind place at the moment. Yeah, that might change, but for now, not too interested about the Atherton Tablelands with winds, mate. Harvey, if the Gulf flow intensifies quickly and heads off quick, yes, Harvey, absolutely, that is a possibility. If the Gulf flow intensified quickly and then moves off to the west quickly towards the NT, yeah, absolutely. That becomes a risk then that the Coral Sea system gets strong very quickly as well. We could have two strong cyclones on both sides. But we're not seeing any evidence there that the Gulf flow is going to be put together well enough, at the surface at least, and stacked well enough through the different levels of the atmosphere to suggest a rapid intensification. But it's certainly something we'd be keeping an eye on, mate. Deb, Nitso, do I remove my shades huss? I don't know, Deb. That'll be wait and see. Dwayne, YouTube went down. Yep. I'll put this on YouTube shortly. What the chances of good... No, we've already... I think we've done all these. Yeah, all right. I think we've done all these. Been exactly as predicted today at Bluewater, says Marcus. No wind, then wind picks up and dumps a shower. Happened 3 times this afternoon while sitting out the back. Yeah, that's about right. I'm assuming Blue Water is in not Blue Water Townsville, or is it Blue Water in Mackay? There's two Blue Waters. There's a Blue Water in Mackay, I think, and there's one in Townsville. Quinton, so no Monday for us at FD Builds. You'll have to talk to Zeke about that one, mate. Bear, bloody hell, Nitzo, you know your stuff. Yeah, I do, mate. I definitely know my stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I will give myself a rap there, bud. I definitely know my stuff. Hey, mate, what is going on with the change in the lightning strikes? Yeah, so I prefer that too, David. So the lightning strikes, mate, but our lightning strike supplier wanted to charge a shit ton of money. And unless we increased your subscription costs from what they are now, which is really, really cheap, to around $300 odd a year, we weren't able to support the increase in costs, mate. So you and I both preferred the old style, but the exorbitant fees that we would have had to pay would have increased our subscription costs from $30 a year. So this one would have been about 60. This one would have been about 200. This one would have been about 70. This one would have been about 220, 230. Right? That's why. And we said, no way. We don't want to make our subscription service for the well-off people. We want to make our subscription service enough to pay our bills to do this shit, but, you know, not to be prohibitive for the average person so they can afford it. And, mate, in the end, you really just need to know where the lightning is. You don't need to know the exact spot where the lightning is. And I can understand why they were going to charge us so much money, because that is a huge business now, mate. That's a multi-million dollar business in Australia, is figuring out exactly where lightning hits. And that way I understand why they charge so much money, right? Because it is big business, that lightning stuff. So yeah, mate, unfortunately, that had to go. Either that, or we had to lose all of our subscribers, because I don't think anyone would have paid $200 a year, including yourself. Andrew, how many staff, mate? Everyone would like to know. A couple. It's just me and Dylan that do the forecasting side of things at the moment. We've got a couple of Mets behind the scene as well, who don't want to be named, but we've got a couple of Mets that we talk to, one from the US and one from Australia. And they do help us out on difficult tasks where, you know, there's a lot of ifs, buts, maybes, and we pass the forecast on and they have a look. And then on our social media team, we've got about a dozen. They get pretty cranky very quickly, and I've told them to get pretty cranky with people very quickly on social media. We're through listening to social media bullshit, right? So if you come and abuse us on social media, our cranky admins will get rid of you before you can blink. So yes, and that's a directive I've passed down to them. Just absolutely no more bullshit. We've been around 14 years. We don't need to put up with bullshit now. People know who we are, and if they don't, they need to sit down, shut up, and listen. And then as they get to learn who we are, they'll figure out if we're for them or not. But if they start abusing us because they're dickheads who have just come in, they're gone. Tian, it seems very similar to 2011. Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of similarities to 2011 yet. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you one thing that was making me iffy like 2011 was this system over here coming right hot on the heels of the first one, because that was like Anthony and Yazi, right? So we had the first cyclone that just stuffed around, half a cyclone, small cyclone. That was Anthony. And then you had this thing here. A few days ago, this thing was barreling straight into the Queensland coast as a Cat 4. Right, and that day I was definitely concerned, but it only lasted a day, and we trended quickly away from that. And thank goodness we did, because that was giving me Yazi vibes, but not anymore. We're not seeing that same type of setup. Plus, the messiness of this system wasn't like Anthony. Anthony was a really nicely small, but really nicely put together system. So no, I'm not seeing the same structure as 2011, mate. Not at the moment. Ryan, my daughter flight lands in Proserpine on the 10th. No, you're fine, mate. Nothing. I'm not going to say nothing. Proserpine on the 10th. What's that? Saturday. Showers. Oh, sorry, it's 10th. I thought we were on the 8th today. I misread my date. So 10th is going to be right on that time where that cyclone is coming towards the coast, but probably just before it hits the coast. Now, the big thing about Mackay Whitsundays and Prossie being part of that area, you guys will tend to see the bigger shower or the most shower activity first, right? So you guys will end up seeing probably more shower activity before the rest of the coastline because of the type of, you'll get a southeasterly, east-southeasterly pattern through here. So as she lands on Saturday, there's going to be strong winds and there is going to be heavy showers about through the region in and around Prossie on Saturday, mate. So, yeah, sorry. I got my days wrong there. But Saturday does look like a very active weather day for Prossie. It'll be a bit of a hairy landing, I reckon. And don't forget here, we're also expecting to see very strong winds on that Saturday too. So we take a look at those winds. You can see here, maybe not right over Prossie, but around, you've got very significant winds, and you can see gusting up to about 30 to 35 knots through the day in that area. So Proserpine, I think the airport is a little bit more sheltered, isn't it? Where's the airport? The airport's like south of the city somewhere. I think the airport's south of the city. So I think it is a little bit more sheltered than the township. Or it might be the other way around. Maybe the airport's not as sheltered and the township's sheltered. I don't know, but one of them's a bit more sheltered than the other. Because we did a cyclone chase over there and we remembered that there was a lot of wind in one of them. I think it was actually the other way around. I think the airport gets really windy and I think Proserpine is quite sheltered from those winds. I think that was what happened. Yeah, but anyway, it's going to be a bit hairy. There's going to be a lot of shower activity and there's going to be some strong winds on Saturday, mate. Jack, I wish I learnt this at school. Shani, how you going, buddy? I used to teach Jack back in the day, and I used to ref Jack back in the day. He's a good footy player. You used to love to chat, didn't you, Shani? When's the latest Townsville people should mow? Friday. Go mow Friday because by Saturday we'll probably start to see some shower activity. Bella, I'm not expecting a category. I just explained what I was expecting there. I'm expecting to see category 1 and 2 winds, but I'm not expecting the system to tighten up at this stage unless something changes. Goldfield Ashes coming up. Not looking really good. Oh, Desi. Desmond. When's the Goldfield Ashes, mate? Is it this weekend? No, it's a bit early for the Goldfield Ashes. They're usually around Australia Day, Des. So by that stage, mate, this whole rubbish should be well and truly gone. Yeah, mate. This is happening, over the weekend and into early next week, bud. So yeah, Des, I don't think the Ashes are going to unless you guys changed the dates of the Ashes? Have they been brought forward a couple of weeks? As far as I knew, they were still around Australia Day. And Australia Day is still a couple of weeks away. So by that stage, mate, all this rubbish should be dead and gone, hopefully. Crystal King. Crystal was a colleague of mine too at in Charters Towers. Jack Shun, you didn't listen in school. They're having a bit of banter. Love it. Alana, love the update. Nitso, thanks, Alana. Cameron, flogging down for a few hours now in Cooktown. Seems to just keep coming. Yeah, this should be the last of it up around Cooktown, mate. We do expect to see things settling down through Cooktown. We expect to see things sort of push a little bit offshore at that point. Just give you a quick squeeze here. Yeah, so big rain coming. Yeah, so you can see there, models picked that up beautifully over through the nighttime hours. And then tomorrow, you can see tracking offshore. And then tomorrow, Arvo, we shouldn't see as much around Cooktown. It should be just north of Cooktown. So Cooktown's going to be on the southern edge of anything that happens big tomorrow. But tonight, really clear and obvious significant rain. And if you're a subscriber, we talked about that in the subscription update for the Cairns Cooktown area. Make sure you're a subscriber. Give that a go. $32.95 a year. All right. Cairns on the 15th. No, this should be well and truly over for Cairns on the 15th. But in its wake, there's going to be showers and thunderstorms, Cassie. So it's not going to be fine. It's going to be showers and thunderstorms because the monsoon's going to come back into Cairns by the 15th. But this system that we're talking about, all done and dusted, mate. All finished. Is all the rain that GFS-AI and ECAI are predicting for southern Queensland linked to a trough? I haven't looked, mate. I'm assuming it would be. but I haven't looked. Let's have a look. Yeah, so this stuff down here, yeah, that's all trough related. You can see that northwest, the classic tail of the classic signature of northwest to southeast aligned rainfall, that's totally trough related. Okay, so every time you see that northwest southeast motion of rainfall, that's definitely trough related, mate. So you can see that's trough related, and obviously being pumped in a little bit of moisture into that trough as well. So from the tropics. So that's John, that's your question. Is Rockhampton area due for any rain? A little bit of shower activity at this stage for Rocky. No major rainfall, but then again, we don't know how far south that low is going to go. I mean, the latest trending shows it going down as far as the Whitsundays. So if that trend continues, then the Yeppoon Rocky area could see some very healthy rainfall as we go into Sunday and beyond. But for now, based on current evidence, I would have to say that Rocky isn't in for anything major, but you are certainly in for a bit of shower activity through the weekend and possibly peaking on Sunday or Monday through that area. Brooke? Jesse, hey Nitzo, what's the winds and rain likely Sunday? Yeah, Jesse, bud, if I knew that, I'd be charging $1 million. If you could ask me what's the wind and the rain doing of this particular day, at this particular time, at this particular location, bud, I would be a multi-millionaire. Spoiler alert, I'm not. And so, yeah, I genuinely can't tell you because, as you know, Saturday and Sunday, and I think you're from the Whitsundays, Saturday and Sunday, we do expect to see that low coming towards and onto the coastline. So we would be expecting all the weather that comes with that. Heavy rainfall, big winds, all that stuff, mate. That's right on that time frame that you're talking about. So I wouldn't be planning anything. Let's just say this, Jesse. Don't go planning anything outdoors on Sunday if you're on the Whitsundays area, the 11th of January. Okay? Jack Shun, 16th, 17th, 18th is Ashes. Okay. Let's have a look. So by that stage, our cyclone would have hit the coast. It would have been moving west into northwest Queensland. And we're probably seeing lots of significant rainfall, very similar to the setup that we had the last time, where we had a lot of the rain west of Charters Towers out towards Hughenden over the 16th, and then 17th, 18th, it might sort of duck southwards. Yeah. So that's, at this stage, Charters Towers sort of piggy in the middle. They're probably not going to get the heavy rain that they got over the coast, and they're probably not going to get some of the heavy rain that they might get out west again. But that's not going to guarantee no disruptions in that time frame, mate, because we're still expecting to see showers and storms. It's just showers and storms, not general heavy rain all day. That's the expectation there for that area. Yep, good question, Andrew. Our next live stream isn't until Thursday night. Thursday night, we're going to see the low starting to move west. And at that point, we'll be definitely able to lock in some areas and we'll be definitely able to start mapping out wind fields. I think I was going to do it Wednesday night, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to give you another day of umming and ahhing on Wednesday night, and I'd like to give you something a bit more concrete. So Thursday night will be about 2 days away from landfall, maybe a day and a half if the system's moving quick, but generally about 2 days away from landfall, and that's where we can start to nail who's getting what, how much we're getting, what sort of winds are we going to see, all that sort of stuff, mate. All right, guys, I'm off. Thank you for watching tonight, and I'll have this up on YouTube for those folks who missed out on the Q&A part. Thanks for watching. Just remember, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe if you want to support our work. Thank you.